Everybody should know by now that half-baked, non-apology apologies don't work. They don't let everybody move on from the story. They rumble on and get bigger and get worse. And Tim Davie, Director General of the BBC, should know better. There he was yesterday, apologising if anybody involved in Strictly Come Dancing had an experience that wasn't wholly positive. That's what he's apologised for. If you had an experience that wasn't wholly positive. This at the time when there's an investigation into all sorts of allegations surrounding Strictly Come Dancing. Now, I worked at the BBC for a while and I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't call it wholly positive. In fact, I don't think I know anyone who worked there who would describe it as wholly positive. What we want to know from Tim Davie and what we want an apology for is, was there any bullying? Who was doing it? Who knew? And when? And was it covered up? And we want that trust to come back. Have you learnt anything from the Jimmy Savile situation and the Jonathan Ross and Russell Brand Saxgate furore and all the row about BBC procedures? That's what we want to hear from Tim Davie, not an apology if anyone had an experience that wasn't wholly positive. Now, where it gets tricky, of course, if you're working in comms and PR, that might be what you want to say. You might instinctively know that this half-baked non-apology isn't going to cut it. But then, of course, legal and HR come in and they say, well, look, there's an investigation taking place and we can't say anything that preempts the investigation. And, well, we don't want to admit to something that we might not have done, because then there's maybe going to be other procedures and other people getting involved in that. I understand that. I happen to disagree with it, but I understand it. And if that's the conclusion that you come to, well, fine. Don't apologise then. Don't say anything. We need to get away from this idea that, oh, well, we need to say something. We want this to go away. Throw the little people something and they'll forget about it. They'll take it as an apology. Well, no, they don't. And it doesn't really matter what you or I think. We are littered now with examples, time after time after time, of organisations who've said something, apologised to try and make it go away, but they've apologised for the wrong thing, or they've not been specific enough, and it just gets bigger, and it gets worse and worse and worse. So if you can't say the right thing, then don't say anything. And when we're talking about apologising, my kids learnt this at 6 years old. It's like my boy comes to me and he says, I'm sorry for being bad. Can I get the games console back? And I'm like, no, you go away, you think about it, you come back and say sorry for hitting your brother, or sorry for your cheek, or whatever it is. Then we can talk and then we can move on. But I need to know that you're clear about what you're apologising for. Same for Charlotte Dujardin. She put a statement out yesterday, and it's a nice statement, and I read it and I do think that she understands how serious the matter is. She seems to have asked to have been removed from the Olympic team, although I also read somewhere that there was an automatic suspension, that she wouldn't have been allowed to compete. She's certainly cooperating with the investigation, but she's described it as an error of judgment. I am very sorry for an error of judgment. There's a video circulating that appears to show her hitting a horse. So if she did that, if she's serious about recognising that as an error of judgment, then I want to hear her say, I am sorry I hit that horse. And when you say it like that, it is a whole other dimension. It's so easy to apologise for an error of judgment. We can all do that. It's a lot harder to explicitly address what it is you did wrong. And if you do that, there's going to be more pain today. It's going to be much tougher in the short term because you're calling a spade now. But it will be, assuming you genuinely show remorse, it will be easier to move on, and you will regain people's trust much more quickly than if you're basically kicking the can down the road. There will be a reckoning sooner or later. And I think this idea that, oh, well, I can't say any more because there's an investigation, it really doesn't wash. And like I say, if you're not prepared to go all the way and reveal everything that went on and tell the whole story, then don't tell half of it and think that that's going to make your life easier.